it's been sort of assumed by critics of this process that Officer Wilson sort of got the benefit of the doubt, and actually there was a bias in favor of him through this grand jury process. You argue in your column to the contrary. The system was actually against Officer Wilson.
Well, yeah, for exactly the reason I was just mentioning. In a normal case, you would not bring this case to the grand jury.
At all.
No, and one of the reasons is, not only do you have this, this factual situation where the ballistics and the other forensic evidence seem to bear out his account of what happened, and all these stories about how, Brown had his hands up and was shot just trying to surrender, those collapsed as the questioning happened. But you also have this overlay in Missouri of the use of force, which under the law of the state of Missouri, you can argue whether this is, a good policy or a bad policy, but it's the law. A police officer can use deadly force in the apprehension of someone if he's got a reasonable fear that there's either a danger to life or the infliction of serious bodily injury.
Right.
In the absence of the use of force. So he had a legal justification under a state statute that governs the case to do what he did. You can argue, and maybe at some point in a civil case they will, if the Brown family decides to sue him, that there was civil negligence involved and that there ought to be money damages. But in terms of the criminal law, this is beyond the pale, clearly not a murder case.
Right.
And if I'm a prosecutor, I don't bring the case to the grand jury. What happened here is the prosecutors departed from that normal process because the case was so racially charged and because the Justice Department was, rattling its saber. And they put the whole thing in front of a grand jury, and the prosecutor didn't really take a position, basically said, I'm abdicating my responsibility to make an assessment here about whether this is a case we should really try, and dump the whole thing in the grand jury's lap so that the community could decide whether this case merited being charged or not. In other words, whether it had probable cause to bring it over for a trial. That would not happen in a normal case.